in your experience, because I totally get it for programmers, because I think if you can't see the way that they solve problems and their sort of
Yeah,
their critical thinking skills, that's
yeah,
really kind of more or less what you're hiring them for, right? I
right.
think like I'm wondering, do you see the same kind of effectiveness with animation tests?
Um, I would defer to animation directors on that, like yourself. But the challenge with reels, as you know, especially if it's a junior intermediate, who else touched this? Who else polished it? Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So what you're seeing on their demo reel, and I often ask for breakdowns, and then I ask who your supervisor was, and I've got senior matte painters lying. You know, oh, everything in here is mine. And I'm like, really? I'm going
Yeah,
to
it's
call
like,
the three other matte painters I know that worked on that show.
yeah, that's it. That's
I,
it.
perfect example. And it was one many, many years ago. I don't want to tell too many stories and name too many names, but somebody claimed in an interview with someone standing right next to me that he had fixed, I'm just going to say, a portion of a movie, a big blockbuster movie that they called him in to fix. The fellow sitting next to me was best friends back in school with the supervisor on that part of the movie. And after this fellow left the interview, he phoned his friend and said, "Did this guy do the following on that movie?" And he went, "I've never heard of that guy before." You know. And so back to your
Yeah.
point, are tests valuable? Depends on how the test is set up. Really,
Yeah, I've always felt like as long as it's not expecting 3 days of your time, like if it's going to take you a couple hours or an evening to do, then it's funny though, because I think that what you bring up is really important, because I think people need to be sent. That's why it's great to have you here, because I think it's very obvious that the other side of the equation can read into a lot of these kinds of practices, and they don't see the big picture, so they just feel like, well, if they just want work for free. No, it's unfortunately there's a bunch of bad apples that have totally spoiled it for everybody, and because plagiarism does happen on demo reels more than people would like to think. And so, I mean, at the end of the day, a company does have a right to protect its interests and not hire somebody's salary that's a liar. So it is an interesting way to get around that problem.
I could write a book and fill a basket of the people I've moved around the globe, only to find out 2 or 3 months later in the studio, someone's going, and now we paid for airfare, we paid for hotel accommodations, we paid for meals, we're out like 10 something, 15, $20,000 sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And this poor person now has to relocate back home, right? This is a mess. Everyone wears the mess.
A huge mess.
Had this been fixed with a 1 or 2 day or 4 hour test, are you kidding me? We would have saved tons of time. This individual would have saved tons of time. I can think of people who have literally sold their homes, left their apartments, packed everything up in the car, drove across, yada, 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 flown across the world. I saw a guy in Montreal that was there from India, another guy from China. Had to go back to China, had to go back to India.
That's rough.
After a 9-month immigration thing and legal fees to get all these work permits and visas and stuff.
It's bad for everybody in a case like this, right? Like it's just messy. Sergey and Chat had something really interesting to say about this topic, and it was from their perspective. So this is fun little ping pong we got going on here, because they're like, okay, cool, but like just here's the scenario. Like he's been in a situation. Well, I'll just read it. It says, as for the test request from a studio who contacted me, that required about 10 days in total, so they can also quote unquote see how it is to work with me. It was also not paid, and they never ever even revealed the salary range that they could expect if they actually did said test. And so I think that it's interesting, right? That's like the truth lies in the middle somewhere. There are some studios that are doing this, but they're abusing it, and it gives a bad name to studios, and mistrust starts to develop on the actual artist side. And on the other side, it's like, well, some of these things are actually reasonable, and they are, maybe paying, or they only want like a certain amount of time being spent. So I guess everyone needs to get in a room and agree on terms or something.
I completely agree. 10 days is crazy, right? That's and without all the other criteria.
Yeah, like there
no,
needs
hell
to be.
No, hell no.
Yeah.